Hello again. Today we are going to talk about variation and natural selection and the evolution of species. So in this lesson we are going to define three concepts which are adaptation, adaptive feature and evolution. And also we are going to give examples for adaptation and after that we are going to uh, understand Darwin's theory, how Darwin's theory benefited from the ideas of other scientists. So let's start with the first concept, which is adaptation. Actually, adaptation is the evolutionary process whereby an organism becomes better able to live in its habitat. So here they define the adaptation actually when the organism that is well suited to make the most of the limited resources within the environment. So if the organism can live and suited in the environment, so he is adapted in the environment. Okay, now we we already studied two examples of adaptation before, which are the cactus, and we said that cactus can live in hot environments, and also water lily can live in aquatic environments. So because cactus can live there and water lily can live in aquatic environments, so they are adapted to live there. Now, what about lion? Here we have another example, which is lion. Lion also has adaptations that enable it to capture prey. Those adaptations are structural, biochemical, and behavioral. So, structural inside its mouth, for example, we have more structural adaptations, but the most important two things to get food, which are teeth and the claws. So, the lion or lions in general has structural adaptation that they have teeth and the claws inside their mouth. And the second adaptation is biochemical. They have inside their body extra protein digesting enzyme. You know that protein is digesting enzyme to digest the meat. Okay, so they have extra protein, so they have extra digesting enzymes. What about behavioral? Actually, behavioral, they are hunting in groups. So they want to hunt any prey, they hunting in groups. Okay, so this is the example, the third example of adaptation. Now let's go to the adaptive feature. Actually, before defining adaptive feature, we have to understand that when the organism has a high fitness. What do you mean by high fitness here? Actually, organisms that are well adapted show high fitness. So when the organism are well adapted, when the organism is well adapted to live in the environment, so he is high fitness. So an adaptive feature is an inherited functional feature. So it's inherited feature of an organism that increases its fitness. So we have inherited features. Those features increase the fitness of the organism. Okay, now the third concept is evolution. Actually, evolution is the changing through time to produce new species. So the organisms in general, they change through time. So they produce new species. And this is the idea of Darwin's theory. Now let's know who is Darwin. Actually, Charles Darwin was a British naturalist. Uh, Actually, he has an idea. His idea that all living organisms, or in general, we have uh, evolution in general to produce new species. Okay, so actually, Darwin's theory benefited from the ideas of other scientists. Let's understand what is the idea and how he used the scientists' ideas to use or to prove his theory. Okay, now actually Darwin's said that living organisms could change in structure, so he suggested that species became adapted to meet the challenges of their environment. So the theory of Darwin, okay, he said that living organisms could change in structure. So the structure of the organisms can be changed. So he suggested that species became adapted to meet the challenges of their environment. Then he used the Charles Lyell ideas. Who is Charles Lyell? Actually, he was a geologist. He pointed out that rocks of different ages contained the fossilized remains of different animals and plants. So he Darwin used this idea to convince his theory. Then he used Thomas' idea. Thomas showed that population of living organisms would increase indefinitely, unless they were kept in check by limited resources. So here the idea that the population of living organism increases. Okay, so he used those two ideas from Charles and Thomas. Then we have another scientist. Here we have Alfred. Actually, Alfred, he convinced all the ideas that Darwin explained. So he wrote to Darwin and he said that he had reached the same conclusions about the natural selection. So Darwin and Alfred, they had reached the same conclusion. After that, Darwin was stung into action and he published his ideas in his book, which is The Origin of Species. So it's the story for Darwin. So we started with simple idea, which is living organisms could change in structure. So he suggested that species became adapted to meet the challenges of the environment. He used two ideas from Charles Lyell and from Thomas. Then Alfred studied all the points in the theory and he had reached the same conclusions about natural selection. So Darwin published his book, which is The Origin of Species. So that's what you have to know from this lesson. Thank you.